Today I want to talk to you about my favorite stock research tool that I use pretty much every single day to track my portfolio, but also to find new stocks, new ideas, and follow up on my existing holdings and portfolio to see if I'm still invested in the right stocks and whatever new stocks I want to add to my portfolios. Personally, I used a lot of different websites and tools over the years, including some of the classics such as Yahoo Finance, CNBC, Google Finance. However, in the end, I never got the full picture and always kept coming back to one particular website, and that is I found you. I was seeking for alpha. I've been using the website for a number of years, in fact, the free plan, and honestly, for most of you, probably it will be enough. But recently, since I got even more serious about dividend growth investing for the long term, I really wanted to get even more information on a particular stock and the dividend track record and more. And that's when I decided to upgrade to Seeking Alpha Premium. And in today's video, I'm going to run you through the platform, show you all the benefits it offers, and obviously answer you the question, is it worth paying for premium? With this, let's get started. Right, so here we are on the main page, seekingalpha.com. I prefer the dark theme, so you can change in the settings, but it just looks cleaner for me and nicer visually to see. Recently, actually, they went through quite a bit of redesign. Most of the things you can get here actually are also included in the free version. So in general, I just want to review the website overall, and then afterwards I'll touch on a few things that the premium plan offers that the free one doesn't. So obviously you're going to be greeted by some of the main indices over here. So that's always a nice quick overview to see how things are going, what is gold standing at, how's the S&P doing. So that gives you a quick overview and glance how the overall markets are doing. Then you have some trending analysis and trending news. Honestly, for me, I'm a long-term investor, so I'm not really chasing any trends and so on. Still, it's good to stay up to date with what obviously is going on and to keep an eye on the overall macroeconomic situation in market. So that's always a good start. So then obviously from here you could jump into analysis, where you can do a bit deeper analysis and choose specific sectors, etc. What you want to look for. You can favorite them. If you only look for dividend stocks, for example, you could favorite them and only get analysis towards different dividend stocks. So that can give you some good ideas, etc. So that can be quite interesting. But honestly, again, I don't really look at it as such. For that, I use my stock screener to find my stocks and then do deeper analysis on that. Once again, you have the news tab over here where you can also filter by what kind of news you want to read. And yeah, that's really nice to stay on top in certain things, and other things that don't interest you, you may not want to read about it. Then there's market data, a bit more, different countries, etc. And one thing I need to mention here is Seeking Alpha is definitely best for US-based stocks. If you want to invest in Europe, they have most of the companies here, I'll show you in a second, but often they're denominated in dollars, even though actually they're priced in euros, let's say, and sometimes a little bit different ticker symbol. So it is possible to get insights on that company, but especially when you plan to invest in US stocks, that's really where the tool shines. Then there's things like investing groups. I'm not really part of it. Basically, it's like almost like a Facebook group on steroids in a way, if you wanted to. There you have to pay extra to join the group, and there you talk all about specific things and really have experts in the group. But once again, for me, that's really not needed. Then we come to the portfolio section. That's where for me, the tool is super valuable. For example, myself, I use Interactive Brokers as my broker of choice, and I have it linked up over here. So basically, whenever I do a trade, it automatically pulls the data from my Interactive Brokers account and puts it here, but in a much more visually pleasing way. I can see what's happening. I can deep dive from there easily into the stock and see what's going on. I have the same on my phone. So on the go, I can see what's happening to my portfolio. You could say you can do the same obviously through Interactive Brokers, but it's much faster, much more seamless, much sleeker interface. I get better information, easier displayed. And that's one of the drawbacks I have with Interactive Brokers. It's an amazing tool, but the overall user interface is really not that great. So here I get much more data in a much better way. And that's actually only available in the premium plan. And that was for me one of the big reasons why I actually upgraded. I could even link more than one broker, but I have only Interactive Brokers. But if I had different brokers, I could also link them here and then obviously have an overall view of my different portfolios all over here. And the cool thing is you can actually customize your view. By default, you will have a summary with a couple of things that you can see. Obviously price changes, the day range, 52-week range, and some quant ratings. That's really cool. But I've actually customized my own view, and then you can go over here and edit the view if you wanted to. But I'm really happy with this because here I have literally everything I need to see. Obviously the price change. So first thing when I log in, I can see here how's it been doing for the day range, and then obviously the 52-week range. For me, it's always very important when I buy a stock, because I have a number of stocks I want to buy. I usually also look at that because I don't want to buy something that is at the end of the 52-week. On the contrary, when I have a stock that I already own and I want to buy more of, and it's currently at the bottom of the 52-week low, you can see here, for example, Pfizer, then definitely I would allocate my money right now over there rather than one that's at the top of it. Now, obviously, that's just one of the factors I look at, but definitely helps me to dollar cost average into the market over time while still capitalizing on lower priced stocks. Then obviously you can see the total value of that particular stock that it has in my portfolio. I can see here the yield I get from it, the dividend, so to say, the forward dividend as well, the dividend growth over a 5-year period. So for me, that's very important, not just the current dividend, but I'm a dividend growth investor. So I want that number to be growing. So when I see some of the stocks here with 13% growth, 22%, 26% growth over a 5-year period, meaning every single year it's compounded. Wow, I mean, that's really impressive. Then obviously years of growth, how many years? And how many of those have been consecutive years of growth? So that's once again very important. There's no point for me getting a dividend growth for 5 years, but then in 6 years they actually stop and completely cut the dividend. So I want this to be consecutive and growing over time. That's the whole idea here. The payout ratio, of course, how much of the earnings they allocate towards paying out. If they allocate 100% of the earnings towards dividends, that's way too much. They're over leveraged and that's really not good. So anything below that, for me, 15%, very attractive. That means even if the business goes down for a year or so, they will still be able to pay that dividend continuously. The ex-dividend date, that's the latest date you need to be a shareholder in order to qualify for the next dividend payment. So that's always good to see. And then dividend safety, dividend growth. So these are some of the ratings that come from Seeking Alpha. So that's a really good visual representation where you can see, okay, is my dividend safe for the future? More or less. If it isn't, if it's a D+, it's in red, then you can click into it and see why they say it's not safe potentially. Then we have the 10-year total return, not just a price return, because a lot of people only invest in price appreciation, that the prices go up, but here we look at total return. I'll show you in one particular stock in a second what that means, but basically that means reinvesting in dividends. Those two components together, the price appreciation plus the dividend together makes your total return. And when you can see some of them over here in a 10-year period returning 1,200%, some really nice dividend growth stocks for sure. And lastly, of course, the market cap to kind of get a glance, how big is the company, how valuable it currently is, and gives you an indication. I usually only invest in large and mega cap companies, meaning 10 billion and above market valuation, because they're less volatile, there's more liquidity in those stocks, and yeah, I just prefer that. And from here I can go into my holdings, see how many shares I hold, what was my cost basis, the gain, the total gain, etc. So really, really powerful, much easier to see and useful than interactive brokers actually. And I can also do my custom notes. Once you have 20, 30 stocks in your portfolio, sometimes you might forget why you actually invested in the first place. And it's sometimes really good to put a note of your own conviction, because you can't borrow conviction. Maybe some time ago you read a cool article where somebody said that stock will go to the moon, you should buy it, and then you bought it, but then 6 months later you forgot why did I actually buy that stock. You can actually make a note about it to remind yourself, and then if let's say 6 months later you look at the note and you look at the stock and say, well, it's actually no longer aligned with my vision and doesn't really make sense, fine, then you can take it out. So if that's relevant, you can do this here, and I think it's a really neat feature to have. Then you have the various ratings over here, and once again, that's one of the cool features of Seeking Alpha Premium, where you have full access to all the ratings, because in the free plan you have only some of them, but a lot of them are hidden and they don't show that to you. But here you can easily see the nice color coding, what's happening to stock, how's it looking, and yeah, really, really like that feature. Then up and down ratings, that's also very good, where they show you which of your stocks in your portfolio has been upgraded, downgraded, and then obviously you can click into see the details as to why that adjustment has been made. You see the earnings and you see obviously the dividends, really a lot of insights all about dividends for your entire portfolio. You don't even have such a view in interactive brokers. I mean, in interactive brokers, finding your dividend income is such a pain, and here it's just so much easier. And for me, honestly, that feature alone is worthwhile paying for premium. Then obviously you get a nice health score over here, which is a nice little visual representation of how your portfolio is doing as per their insights, obviously overall how your stocks are scored, how the breakdown is. Most of my stocks are in the strong buy or buy, what analysts thinking about it, how my dividend safety score is. So really nice analysis of your overall portfolio based on their rating system. So that's good to know that overall you're in the green. Of course, that's just an indication, but in case it was all in the red, I would definitely have to do a deep dive into why that is, and obviously then maybe action accordingly. But here everything looks good. I'm really happy with that. And one cool thing that you can do is actually get alerts on your portfolio, either for articles or for news coming out. Plus, if you want, you can get a daily email at the beginning or end of the day with your portfolio, the latest news and the overall movement of your portfolio if you wanted to have that. And of course, some price alerts if you want to set it up. Then I have my watch list, and that's really nice as well. So these are all the stocks that I'm actively watching and potentially want to buy in the future, where I've done already some research and I kind of like what I see and I want to keep them on the radar. I have the same view as for my interactive brokers portfolio. So with this, let's jump into one of the stocks that I own. In this case, let's take Johnson & Johnson. So we'll click into this. Right, and here you really have an amazing overview of that particular stock. So you can see here the stock ticker symbol, the current price, what it is, where it is listed, obviously New York Stock Exchange, price in dollars. And also over here, it's the first time you're looking for a stock. For example, you could be following or unfollow. If you follow it, then it automatically goes into your watch list. And you can also from here put price alerts. So in case you want to be notified when there's a certain price change, you can also have a ratings change. In case you want the quant system, if it's downgraded, upgraded, you could also be notified immediately. So that's really cool if you wanted this. But again, I'm a long-term investor. I really do my due diligence. I don't invest for 1 month or 1 year. I invest for 5, 10, 15, 20 years. So for me, those things are not really relevant. And from here, you really have the most important things that you actually need access to. You obviously have the headers over here. You can dive into some of them. And what I really like is even the charting tool, because some of the charts are so difficult. It's so hard to know how does the stock perform in a 5-year period. For example, here, I just click on 5 years and boom, I can see it grew by 28%. How about a 10-year period? Boom, I can see here it grew by 90%. A 1-day change, 5-day change. So it makes it much easier. On Yahoo Finance, it was really hard for me to see what has been the changes over time. Of course, there's a much more advanced charting tool as well if you want to do that. It takes it, I believe, from TradingView. But once again, I'm not a day trader. For me, that's actually way too much. I don't need these fancy charts, but if you do, they are available as well. So I go back to basics. And then here you have a few more information. Obviously, always interesting, the 52-week range, day range, EPS, in case you're interested in that. For me, PE ratio is always a good indicator of how much generally the stock is priced, and the short interest. That's a very important number for me, and many platforms actually hide it somewhere, and here it's front and center because it's very important. If that number is high, 3-4% and higher, that means a lot of people are betting against the stock, potentially losing in price value. And for me, I'd rather keep my hands away, because that's just a matter of time until somebody drops an article that's negative, that drives the price down. So I always want to see this number. And here, obviously, Johnson & Johnson, there's not really many people betting against that behemoth of a pharma company. Right, then obviously over here, you see some of the rating summaries. There's a whole separate slide on it, but basically you can see some of those ratings, and they can be very powerful to quickly get a glance of how a particular stock is doing. Then over here, you have all the analysis and news, and that's where really Seeking Alpha shines. And I really love how they easily showcase the general sentiment of the particular author of the article. For example, buy means obviously that person writes an article that overall encourages the buying of that stock. But then we also have some others. You can see here, hold, or sometimes going to be in red, sell. And then you can have a different thesis on your stock, because I don't want to just have people saying, yes, you should buy, yes, you should buy. That's kind of the herd mentality. I want to have a 360 view, and there are always going to be alternating views on anything in life, especially when it comes to buying stocks. So I always like to read the pros and the cons. Actually, they have one section over here, what the bulls say, the positive people, and what the bears say. Now, currently, there aren't too many bears here, it seems, but for many stocks, you're going to have overall sentiment of bears here as well. So that's really good to give you a two-sided analysis. And then you can obviously click on there, you can see when it was last published. And usually some of the bigger stocks, they have quite regular articles. It's not going to come every single day, but some of the more popular stocks obviously have more articles covered. So let's jump into this, for example. And then you can see here a quick summary of what it's about. And the cool thing is I can see also the analyst ratings history. So I can go into that and then obviously see that particular analyst and writer. So yeah, and then obviously I can see here the whole thesis, what he writes about. Usually they have some nice backup, some good data. So I really, really like those articles because they're much less biased than if I only read what Johnson & Johnson is publishing, while at the same time being a bit more educated than if you only read financial Twitter and see what users commenting over there. So usually reading a couple of those articles really gives you a good idea of any litigation processes out there, future projects and innovation of the company. So for me, that's one of the really powerful things. So here, for example, is another article that I quite liked and really gives so much deep dive analysis that otherwise I might have missed. So I really, really always enjoy reading them. And more importantly, actually the comments as well, because those comments are people that usually invest into stock. So they have a bit more education and more in the know. And here's really interesting to see what people have to say. And you get some even more insights from people usually reading those articles, investing. They're not just some random guys on Twitter who give their 2 cents, but often more educated commentators. So I really quite enjoy that as well. So then more on the overview of the stock side, we have again some more ratings over here, the company profile, which sometimes can be good as well. If it's the first time buying into new stock, you want to get a quick glimpse of what the company is all about, where it's registered. You have the website over here, so that's really good. How many people and employees, and then a couple of graphs, so you can change that from quarter to annual. And over here you can easily see how has the revenue been doing, because obviously you want to see revenue growth over time. You can see the earnings per share over time as well. And then we have a couple of KPIs that you can look at. Obviously I don't want to spend too much time on this now, but just to give you an idea, things that you can see. And again, on the premium plan, often some of those things are limited. You wouldn't see all these ratings, you wouldn't see all these graphs. Some of them are locked away. They only show you 2 or 3 years, but not 5 or 10 years. So that's one of the big differentiator of premium, and for me was worth paying because I want to see the trend over a longer period, not just 2-3 years. I can see here the dividend growth history. Again, a 10-year growth history. I mean, that's really impressive to see, and that's why J&J is so popular with dividend growth investors. I can see here the ownership, obviously, who owns what. Then obviously they show you also peers, so kind of competitors in the space, and that also gives you a good indication of how the company ranks against competitors. And lastly, you have investor presentations, transcripts. So that's actually really cool as well. I can go into here and see the earnings call presentation. So that's really, really nice. So with the click of a button, I can actually see the entire presentation they've shown during the earnings call. And that's really cool to do a deep dive analysis into the stock, really see what's happening and get a better understanding of what the company is all about, how the performance been. And not only that, I can click into transcript over here, and from here see the entire transcript written out, or I can actually listen to the call. So if I play, then I will listen to it.
Good morning and welcome to Johnson & Johnson's first quarter 2023 earnings call.
So that's really cool. I can listen to it straight from here, and yeah, really nice. Even though personally I prefer using the app Quarter for this, because there I can listen to it on the go at faster speed, and I really like it and get notification whenever a new earnings call is out. But still you have the option using Seeking Alpha for that as well. Right, so going back to the top, obviously we have much more deep dive over here. Analysis, obviously these are the articles. I can see only comments of all various articles over here. I can have the news specifically for the stock, the transcript, SEC filings, press releases, and related analysis. Then we have ratings tab over here. So here you have all the various ratings. These are the quant ratings. That's basically from an algorithm that takes all the various data that has on the company and compiles it and basically gives a review based on their quant system. So that's really a good visual representation of how things are going. And if, for example, I see here a F in growth, I can click into growth and it will take me there where I get further information as to why they give it a bad grade, and I can see and do my analysis accordingly. And obviously if you're a free user, you wouldn't see all of it. Actually, most of those reviews would be locked and you wouldn't be able to see it. If you're a premium user, you can see everything. Then you can change it to Seeking Alpha analyst rating. So these are all the various analysts on that stock. You have certain authors, as you can see, they had different articles at different times and then obviously might change their buying recommendations. So that's really cool to track analysts over time. And actually, if I click into this guy, for example, that I like, I can start following him and then I would get all his latest news. If, for example, I really identify with what he's saying and I like what he's saying, I could follow him and kind of, track what he's commenting and advising. And lastly, you have Wall Street ratings analyst. That's more what you're familiar with maybe from Yahoo Finance and other websites where you can kind of get price predictions, etc. So that's also over there available if you want to see it. Then we can move to financials where you have basically all the various financials over here, and that's really powerful. You can change the currency if you wanted to, etc., the period. And the cool thing is, obviously these numbers can be a little bit intimidating, but you can just hover over here the graph and you can see a visual representation of how it's been doing over time. And for me, that's so powerful to quickly glance, is it doing well? Maybe it's a downward trend, then I would be warned a little bit and have to do some more deep dive analysis as to why. But overall, that's a really cool and neat feature to have. Balance sheets, of course, in case you want to dive into that. And lastly, cash flow, which is very important because, hey, if a company doesn't make cash, do you really want to invest into it long term? Not for me. Then you have the earnings over here. That's really good as well if you wanted to look into that. And of course, as a dividend growth investor, that's probably the section I spend most on it, is on the dividends. And that really has some great information over there. It obviously has the forward dividend yield. It has the actual yield payout ratio, once again, very important. Then the 5-year growth rate, how much has it grown year on year over a 5-year period. And obviously the dividend growth history. And as Johnson & Johnson is a dividend aristocrat, it has been growing for a staggering 60 years, which is really quite unbelievable. Then you go into dividend yield if you wanted to see even more data over there and go into the details. But you can see here also the 10-year dividend yield, how it's been doing. So some years, you can see over here, it was almost 3.5%, which is really good. But overall, it's been hovering around 2.5 to 3%. The yield on cost, also metrics I really like. Basically, the earlier you bought the stock, over time, your yield gets even higher on the investment. Imagine today, the dividend yield you would get on your stock if you would have bought it in 2013, basically 10 years ago, it would be 5.62% on a company like Johnson & Johnson. So that's really cool over time, how yield on dividend really starts increasing. Then one of my favorite tabs, and that's dividend growth. So here you can really see how the dividend has been growing over time. I always click to 10-year period. And once again, that's a feature only available for Seeking Alpha Premium. And you can see here how it's been nicely developing and growing over time. And yeah, that's what we want to see. Obviously, you can see here the history and table view. So really, really powerful. Then dividend safety, where they basically kind of grade and indicate how safe is the dividend potentially for the future. So there are a few warning flags. Then we can go in the dividend history section over here to see even more things. And lastly, dividend estimates for the future. So that's also interesting. They project 2 years into the future up to 2025. Now, of course, these are just estimates, but it gives you a good indication where a stock potentially might be heading towards. Then we can move to valuation. So again, some more metrics that you can deep dive into. The growth over time. So that's of course you want to see a company growing revenues and ultimately profits. So with that, let's jump into profitability. So these are all the margins and rates you have here over there, how it differs to different sectors, etc. So really good there. Then we move to the momentum tab. And for me, that's really an important slide. I always look at it and basically it compares the performance versus the S&P 500, the 500 biggest companies in the US. And that's really always interesting to look at. For example, I can see here the price return versus the S&P 500. Now, when I look at that, actually the S&P 500 returned 167%, while Johnson & Johnson only returned 92%. So actually was lagging in terms of price return. However, when we look at total return and change it to a 10-year period, the difference is actually not that big anymore because you have a nice dividend. The higher the dividend paying stocks, often it can make a difference. I have seen some stocks that are lagging the S&P 500 quite in terms of price, but in total return, meaning reinvesting dividends, they actually outperform S&P 500. Here they show you the price return versus total return and what a difference you get by reinvesting dividends. Instead of only returning 92%, you actually return an additional 60% just by reinvesting the small dividend of 2.3, 2.5%. That's just the power of it, of compounding that over time. And here we're talking about a 10-year period. If I take a much longer period, the maximum they show here since 1993, it basically more than doubles the return by reinvesting the dividends. So really these small dividends make a huge difference over time. And even more moving averages, relative strength. So really good indicators over there. Then peers, that's also a really nice, powerful tool where they basically compare to similar stocks. You can easily quickly compare them across different sectors. You can, for example, also edit a symbol in case you wanted to take one of them out or in. You can actually add up to 20 symbols. So that's really, really powerful. And yeah, from here you can really at a glance compare all of them throughout all the various different KPIs. Then we have a section on option trading, but as personally I don't trade options, that's not really relevant for me. And lastly, we have charting, also a really nice feature I use a lot because here basically by default it compares your stock of your choosing versus the S&P 500. But I can go over here, add comparison, and for example add Pfizer, which is obviously a competitor. Let's add it over here, and then I can see here the chart over time. Let's go to a 10-year period, and instead of price return, go to total return. And boom, I can see here quickly how J&J is doing versus Pfizer versus the S&P 500. I could add more, I could remove some. So that's really a perfect graphing solution. I haven't found many other websites doing that easily. And I can also see here the stock split history of a particular stock to see here when the stock was split. So for me, that's really enough to make educated decision into what I want to invest into. Now, one more thing that's really powerful about Seeking Alpha is obviously their stock screener. So when we click into this here, I can use that tool to find stocks I want to invest in. Obviously, they give you already a couple of screens that are saved over here, top stocks by quant, top rated stocks, etc. So you can click into them and see basically what are the top rated stocks as per their quants. But I prefer doing my own stock screener. I already set one up over here, and then I have set up my filters. Now you can change those filters if you wanted to. If I click over here and edit filters, and then I can basically say what I want. For example, I already set it up over here, and I've done a whole separate video on this. But basically, I want a certain dividend yield, anywhere from 2.4% all the way up to 8%. Dividend growth, 6.5% over the last 5 years, all the way to 20%. Years of growth, 8 years. And obviously consecutive years, 8 years as well. And I want a market cap of at least 10 billion. And the stock should be located in Germany or United States. Then I click done. And from here, basically, I get all the lists. You can see here, now I have 56 stocks to choose from. And these stocks shown over here basically are in line with my stock screener. And from there, I can basically deep dive into each of them and see if that's relevant, if that's something I want to invest in. I could easily sort them by dividend yield, for example, which pays the highest. But yeah, basically you get the drift. Really good way to find any potential stocks that you haven't discovered before and you want to potentially do more analysis in. Now, as I said, obviously you can use the free plan as I did myself for many years, and it's good enough to get started. But now that I'm really committed into investing regularly every single week over time into dividend growth stocks, I really want to make sure I invest into the right companies, get the full picture, not just 1 year or 3 year history, but really 10 year, if not more, of a particular stock, and get the full big picture, analysis, reviews, insights. And for that alone, I really think upgrading to premium is absolutely worth it. If you want to check it out, I got a link in the description below, which will actually give you a 1 week free trial. So you can use premium for 1 week and really see all the features it has to offer. If you don't like it, that's it. You don't have to sign up. But if you do end up liking it and you signed up with my link, you do end up saving almost 60%. Instead of around $250, you will only pay $99 for an entire year. So that's less than $9 a month. And you will see the value is really worth the money, at least in my perception. This is not sponsored by them. Obviously, if you use my link, I do get a little kickback from that. But I'm telling you my honest opinion. I use it myself, I pay for it myself, and I can absolutely recommend you the platform. In this video over here, I'm going to run you through the process process of how I find my stocks to invest in. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please give a like, subscribe to the channel. It means the world to me. As always, stay healthy, get wealthy, and I see you in the next one. Ciao.